As I boarded my flight, my ex-husband was at a jewelry store with his mistress, telling her. The last message on my phone arrived just as the flight attendant announced that all electronic devices had to be switched to airplane mode. Payment declined. Account access permanently revoked. I smiled, locked my screen, and looked out the airplane window. Thousands of feet below, my ex-husband, Ryan Foster, was probably still standing inside the Cartier boutique on 5th Avenue with the woman he'd destroyed our marriage for. He had promised her everything. A diamond ring, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a future funded by the inheritance he believed he had stolen from me. What he didn't know was that every promise he'd made was about to collapse before the receipt could even print. And this time, I wasn't running away. I was simply leaving after making sure there was nothing left for him to take. People think betrayal begins with an affair. They're wrong. Betrayal begins the moment someone starts believing you're too trusting to notice. Ryan and I had been married for 9 years. When we met, he was funny, ambitious, and endlessly attentive. He remembered my favorite flowers, called my mother every Christmas, and convinced everyone, including me, that he was the kind of man who put family above everything else. My father never believed it. Some people admire success, Dad once told me. Others only admire access to it. At the time, I thought he was being unfair. Now I realize he was simply years ahead of me. My father built a construction company from a single pickup truck into one of the largest private firms in the state. He never spoiled me, but he made sure I never worried about money. Ryan loved that part of my life far more than he ever admitted. Whenever someone complimented our house, our holidays, or our lifestyle, he accepted the praise as though he had earned every penny himself. I ignored the small warning signs until my father passed away. The funeral was only 3 days behind us when Ryan placed a folder on the kitchen island. The lawyers need these signed, he said. I haven't even finished reading Dad's will. They're just routine transfer documents. Something about his voice felt rehearsed. I asked for more time. He became irritated. You can't stay emotional forever, Claire. That sentence stayed with me all night. Around midnight, I went downstairs for water and noticed Ryan's laptop still open in his office. Normally, I respected his privacy. That night, I respected my instincts more. His email was open. The first message I saw carried the subject line. After she signs, everything changes. I clicked. What I read made my stomach turn cold. Ryan had been exchanging emails with a woman named Vanessa Brooks for almost a year. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning my financial ruin. He believed the inheritance from my father's estate would automatically become marital property once I signed several transfer documents. After that, he intended to file for divorce immediately, leaving me with almost nothing while he walked away with millions. One sentence froze me completely. Once Claire signs on Monday, we'll finally be free. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I photographed every email and quietly closed the laptop. The next morning, I called the only person my father trusted more than himself, his solicitor, Edward Collins. After listening silently for 15 minutes, Edward sighed. I hoped I'd never receive this call. What do you mean? Your father prepared for something like this years ago. I sat in stunned silence. He created 2 inheritance structures, Edward explained. If your marriage remained healthy, the assets would transfer normally. And if it didn't, they would move into a protected trust under your sole control. I finally understood why my father insisted I never sign anything without independent legal advice. For the first time in months, I felt safe. For the next week, I became the best actress of my life. I smiled, cooked dinner, pretended to believe every lie Ryan told. He became increasingly confident. He started spending money before he actually had it. New watches, luxury suits, private club memberships. He even put a deposit on a penthouse apartment using loans he expected to repay with my inheritance. Vanessa appeared beside him more often. They stopped hiding. They believed I was too heartbroken to notice. In reality, I noticed everything. Edward quietly transferred every protected asset into the trust exactly as my father had planned. Every legal step was completed without Ryan suspecting a thing. When he finally handed me the inheritance documents, I signed calmly. He smiled so widely, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The following Friday, I booked a one-way ticket to London. Ryan assumed I was traveling to clear my head before our new life. He kissed my forehead before driving me to the airport. I love you, he said. It was the easiest lie he'd ever told. By 10 o'clock that morning, I was sitting in the departure lounge with a coffee, while Edward sent me regular updates. Trust activated. Joint accounts separated. Property ownership transferred. Then came the final message. Ready when you are. I typed one word. Proceed. Exactly 15 minutes later, Ryan walked into Cartier with Vanessa. She pointed excitedly at a diamond ring displayed beneath bright white lights. I want this one. Ryan smiled confidently. You deserve the best. He pulled out his black credit card. The sales assistant processed the payment. A sharp beep echoed across the showroom. I'm sorry, sir. Ryan laughed. Try again. The assistant did. Another beep. His smile faded. There appears to be a restriction on this account. Ryan frowned. Impossible. The assistant checked the screen again. I'm receiving instructions that this account has been permanently closed by the primary account holder. Ryan stared in disbelief. What? I'm also required to retain this card. The assistant calmly placed the card into a secure drawer. Vanessa slowly removed her hand from Ryan's arm. What is happening? I don't know. His voice cracked for the first time. He tried another card. Declined. Another. Declined. Then his phone rang. It was his bank. Every joint account had been frozen. Every authorized user removed. Every line of credit suspended pending investigation into suspected financial misconduct. He left the boutique without the ring. Vanessa followed for half a block before stopping. You told me you had millions. I do. No, she replied quietly. You thought you did. She hailed a taxi. Ryan never saw her again. An hour later, he reached our house. His electronic gate code no longer worked. The locks had already been changed. A courier handed him a thick envelope. Inside were divorce papers, a court order preventing him from accessing any property purchased with my inheritance, copies of the emails he'd exchanged with Vanessa, and one handwritten note. You spent years treating my kindness like weakness. Today you finally learned the difference. By the time he contacted his lawyer, Edward had already filed every necessary document. The court ruled that my inheritance had always remained separate property. Ryan's attempt to manipulate me financially worked against him. The affair, the emails, and the fraudulent loan applications became part of the official record. Within months, his business partners abandoned him. The banks demanded repayment of the loans he'd taken out, expecting my money. Without investors or credit, his company collapsed. Meanwhile, my plane landed in London. For the first time in years, nobody expected anything from me. I rented a small apartment overlooking a quiet park. I returned to painting, something I'd given up because Ryan always dismissed it as a hobby. 6 months later, my first exhibition sold out. A journalist asked during an interview what inspired my newest collection. I smiled. Freedom, I answered. Nearly 2 years passed before I heard Ryan's name again. A mutual friend told me he'd taken a sales job after losing everything. He tried to rebuild his life several times, but no investor trusted him anymore. His reputation had become more expensive than any debt he owed. I didn't celebrate. Revenge had never been my goal. Justice was. One rainy afternoon, I visited my father's favorite cafe while back in New York for an art exhibition. As I stirred my coffee, I noticed a folded note left beside my cup. There was no signature, just 7 familiar words. Build your own life. Never borrow someone else's. I smiled through unexpected tears. They were words my father used to repeat whenever I doubted myself. For years, I believed the greatest gift he'd left me was the inheritance. I was wrong. The greatest gift was teaching me that real wealth isn't measured by what someone can take from you. It's measured by what remains after they've tried. And as my flight had taken off that morning, Ryan lost everything he thought he owned, while I finally discovered something far more valuable myself.